Could it be? But me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. Of course, I'm your Commander-in-Chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. So, oh, man. A lot to get to today. A lot happened after we got off of our stream yesterday. And so there's a lot to address and cover, from the Noah Brown signing to the DQ and Adam Peters presser to the Lance Newmark presser today. The practice squad has been completely filled out now. I think there's one spot remaining on the practice squad if they so choose to fill it, because they have the access to the 17th spot with the IPP program, with the player that they have on the IPP. So currently there's only 16. We'll go over that as well. You know, what's really refreshing is there's this place that I'm in as a fan that I haven't been in ever. You know, when this team was good, I was very young and didn't really know that that wasn't guaranteed to me. It wasn't promised to me into the future. You know, when I grew up, the team was good and all I knew was we were winning. That's it. We won all the time. And when we didn't win, I cried because we lost so few times. Okay. More times than not, we were going to win. We were going to find a way to win. And so I took it for granted as a kid, just thinking that we were going to keep winning. And now as I'm older and I'm an adult and I see how this goes, and I understand that from year to year, you're not guaranteed anything, especially if you don't have a quarterback. This offseason has been so refreshing on so many levels. And these press conferences that we'll go over today, I think kind of stress that for me. And especially Lance Newmark's. I call him Lance Brand Newmark. So if you hear me call somebody Brand, I'm talking about Lance Newmark. It's put me in a frame of mind and a mindset that I've been running from. And after last night, if you had a chance to check out the NFC East Super Friends stream, then you know we went over the schedule. And it was really the first time since it was released. Because remember, when it was released, we went through the schedule. I didn't give any predictions. We just went through the schedule, looked at, you know, how tough it might or might not be. What were some of the key stretches? You know, I like to look at how many home games and away games you have in a condensed setting. So 3 out of 4, 4 out of 5, you know, that sort of thing. Where's the bye week? How many primetime games? So I wasn't really looking at it from a wins and loss perspective. Now that I've had a chance to kind of look at these teams in the preseason, kind of have a feel for what I think these teams are going to be, I have a different perspective on the schedule. Let's just say it's Gotcha Bitch Part 2 with Dan Quinn, and he's brought some friends this time around, and Adam Peters, Lance Newmark, and company. So we'll get to that a little bit later on in the show because there's so much to discuss today. So I want to get to those things first before we get to any of my personal feelings and things that I'm feeling right now. So let's start with the news from yesterday. Washington signed wide receiver Noah Brown to their active roster, their official 53-man roster. Remember, you know what else? Let me say this first. You know what else is pretty cool? Something that just hasn't happened a lot here lately because we suck. We had players claimed by other teams and put on their rosters, their active 53-man roster. You know, there were many years where we cut guys, and none of them would go claimed. Nobody would put in a waiver claim. they wouldn't even end up on somebody else's practice squad. They would just vanish, right? This group, we talk about how, lousy this roster is, and oh, it's a bottom 5 this and it's that. And I feel like they've done a remarkable job of turning this thing over in a short amount of time. I've said this a lot to people. I don't really know what you guys were expecting. I think this is the best case scenario and the best outcome we could have had, to be honest with you, for the situation that these guys were put in. But Tariq Castro Fields was claimed by the Carolina Panthers, and KJ Henry was claimed by the Cincinnati Bengals. And in my mind, I'm saying, wow. And Dan Quinn talked about guys texting and, just wanting to tell them how much they appreciated them and things of that nature. We'll get into that when we get to their presser. But it's amazing to see that we had 2 guys claimed and then another guy on, entering someone else's practice squad, which, I don't give too much props for that, because that person could have come back here and gotten on our practice squad. Marcus Rosemy Jack Saint is now on the Philadelphia Eagles practice squad. I guess he saw all those Georgia Bulldogs over there and figured, if they're going to give me an opportunity, I'd rather be with my boys, right? Guys that I went to school with, that I know. And so he took that opportunity, and maybe he sees a path to making their roster or getting some snaps in the future in Philadelphia, whereas he didn't see a path to that happening here in Washington. Whatever the case may be, he was trash. I told you that when we added him. I didn't change my mind on him. He's a basic wide receiver, but good luck to him in the future. Unless he actually makes the Philadelphia Eagles roster and is contributing, then in that case, he can kick rocks. But to see other guys ending up in other places, it just speaks to how far we've come. I know it sounds simple and it's not that big of a deal, but when you've gone years without guys being claimed, when you go and you look at the state of our roster, and when we cut guys and we're mulling over, should we cut, this guy over that guy, when that's the discussion, man, should we cut Ryan Grant? Only for Ryan Grant to maybe play a year more in the league with the Indianapolis Colts, I believe. Should we keep Trey Quinn, or should we cut him? It's just always fascinating to see how the rest of the league thinks of the players that you have on your roster. And it's pretty cool to see some of the guys end up ending on other teams, But anyway, I digress. So we signed wide receiver Noah Brown yesterday from the Houston Texans. And look, at the end of the day, here's how I feel about Noah Brown. A lot of you wanted him. I had people hit me up on socials when he first was released by the Texans, and they wanted him. And I was not as, excited about him. There were other guys that I was interested in that were available. But let me say this first before I say everything that I'm about to say. Noah Brown fits this team's DNA profile to a T. When I tell you he's the exact type of player that they're looking for in terms of tenacity, hustle, physicality, do whatever it takes mentality, got it out of the mud. Like he's cut out of the same cloth as a Terry McLaurin, in the sense that they both went to Ohio State. They both went at the same time. They were behind a bunch of stud receivers, so they didn't get a lot of shine when they were there. They blocked their asses off. They're willing to play special teams. They'll do the dirty work. That was Terry McLaurin. Remember when we drafted Terry in the 3rd round? Remember what we were saying? Well, we got ourselves a core special teamer, a guy that can be a deep threat, take the top off the defense. But we didn't think Terry would morph into what he ultimately morphed into. Noah Brown is similar in that vein. Now, we know who he is at this point of his career, right? Had a career year last year with over 500 yards receiving. But and the beauty of his 500 yards was the 17 yards per catch. It was explosive. It was dynamic. I listened to Texans general manager Nick Caserio speak about Noah Brown and why they went in a different direction. And he just said, look, we just had too many guys. It was a numbers game. We needed somebody that could help us right now. And they look around the roster. They're higher on, obviously, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell. They're higher on the Michigan wide receiver they just gave an extension to. They, I think, just added what's the guy who used to play for the Bills and then he went to the Rams and was a beast with the Rams. Oh man, he tore his ACL. They traded him to Tennessee. Why can't I think of his name? Robert Woods. Robert Woods is there. I don't know if he was there last year or not, but they just got a wealth of guys at the receiver position to the Texans. And so they looked at their situation and they said, we just got a bunch of guys in front of them. And we love what he did for us last year, but we just got a bunch of dudes that we believe in here. And so we had to move on. It was a numbers game. They kept 7 receivers in Houston, right? Steven Sims Jr. being one of them because of what he can do on special teams. They value Steven Sims Jr. on that kickoff. With the new kickoff rule, I said I would have dedicated a roster spot primarily to a kick returner. We did that with Byron Pringle. I would have liked to have had a more dynamic one, but they went and got a dynamic one. Steven Sims Jr., say what you want. If there's nothing else Steven Sims Jr. can do, he can return kicks. So I think that's why Noah Brown lost his spot, because they kept our old friend, Steven Sims Jr. over him because of Steven Sims Jr. ability to run back kickoffs and return punts. So at the end of the day, he is going to come in here and provide a lot of the things that they look for. And him being a guy that has been doubted his entire career, a guy that has been put in a box. When he was in Dallas, all he was really there to do was block. Like, God forbid they threw Noah Brown the football. Oh, my God, right? When he was in the game, you expected him to be blocking somebody. Oh, they're running the football. He got to Houston, and he became an actual target. There was one year in there with Dallas where they threw him the football, and he was able to do some things, showcase what he could do, and that's what landed him in Houston. That last year in Dallas, he actually showed, hey, I actually can catch the football. And he parlayed that into an opportunity with the Texans last year, and he was phenomenal. Their GM, Nick Caserio, said he literally won us 2 games last year. And he's not wrong. I remember those 2 games, the Tampa Bay game and the Cincinnati game, right, where he just went ape shit in those 2 games. He only had 33 catches a season ago, but they were impactful, 33 catches. Again, 17 yards per pop. This guy was, he had a couple of games where it's like 170 yards receiving. And we don't do those types of things here in Washington. So now I can't make the statement that there's not a guy on the roster that didn't have more than 17 catches and didn't have at least 200 yards receiving last season, because we now have a guy that had 33 catches for like 589 yards or something like that, right? So that's now dead officially. But when it's all said and done, I still don't think he's going to be this massive contributor for us, because he's got to get up to speed as to what it is we do here. We'll see how quick of a study he is, because he can help. But my guy Juan Gotti, shout out to my guy Juan Gotti, talking sports. Juan Gotti hit me up on socials when Noah Brown was first released, and he asked me, he said, hey, what do you think about Noah Brown? I really want this guy. That's the guy I really want. And I said, Juan, it's like asking my mom for a pair of crispy all white Air Force Ones, and my mom comes home with a pair of all white Saucony Jazz. Look, I'm appreciative of my mom buying me a pair of new tennis shoes. I'm going to take care of them. I'm going to add them to the mix of my shoes, and I'm going to work it in the rotation. But that's not what I asked for. That's not what I wanted. But I'm appreciative of her getting that, spending her hard-earned money on another pair of shoes for me to rock at school, right? I didn't want Noah Brown. Okay. Let's not make any mistakes about that. I didn't want Noah Brown. There were other guys that I was more interested in. But as I said at the top, more so than the guys I was interested in, Tim Patrick, Terrence Marshall, who nobody put in a claim for, and he's currently a free agent right now. Noah Brown was the best of that group. Let's be clear about that. They got the best guy. It's not my guy, but it's the best guy. And it's not only the best guy on the market, they got the guy that fits their system, fits their team and their DNA profile the best. And that's what's most important. Forget about what I want. Okay. My mom said, this is what I can afford. So you'll get these Saucony Jazz instead. Thanks, Mom. I appreciate it. And that's how I feel about Noah Brown. Thanks, Chef P. I appreciate it. I'm glad you did something. Right? I'm glad you did something. Not what I asked for, but you know what? It's probably what we needed. And that's been part of the theme of this offseason, right? It's not what we wanted. Or I can't speak for you. I don't like putting words in your mouth. I always tell you, I don't like to speak for you. Speak for myself. It's not what I wanted. It's what we needed, right? I didn't want Dan Quinn initially. I didn't want him. I wanted Ben Johnson. That's who I wanted to be this team's head coach. Boy, was that the wrong decision, or would have been the wrong decision. Boy, am I glad he didn't want this job. And I don't know. And it's funny because I act as if Ben Johnson wanted this job, it was his for the taking. I'm assuming that they didn't love DQ all along, that AP didn't say DQ's my guy and Ben Johnson's going to have to win me over and change my mind. I'm assuming that wasn't the case. And that DQ might have been the guy all along. Of course, that's what they're going to tell us, but we'll never know the truth. But you know what? I don't give a shit. I'm so glad that DQ ultimately was the choice, because it would have turned out a lot differently. And I don't know. And I can't say, and maybe I still would have felt the same way, but I can't say that I would have felt the same way with 100% certainty. Because what DQ has brought here is a different energy, a different vibe, a different level of accountability, a different level of brotherhood. He's brought an alpha male feel. And I've talked about alpha versus beta and all of that stuff. Don't need to go down that road again, but DQ was what we needed. I don't know if a lot of you wanted Marcus Mariota here as the backup quarterback. I know I pointed to Jeff Driscoll and said he should be QB2 if we're only keeping 2. And they said, don't worry about that. Marcus is here and he's staying here. They made that abundantly clear. And they said, Jeff can stay too. And for a lot of you, because I know you guys told me, so I'm not putting words in your mouth. A lot of you said, Marcus Mariota stinks. Why is he here? I'm like, it's not about Marcus Mariota, the player. It's about Marcus Mariota, the mentor. And I remember saying, you couldn't have asked for a better mentor for Jaden Daniels. Because not many guys can say, I was the Heisman Trophy winner, number 2 overall pick, franchise-defining player when I was drafted. And the weight of the franchise was rested on my shoulders, and I was brought in to take over and lead this franchise to prominence. But Marcus Mariota can say, yeah, I endured all of that. I went through all of that. There are only a select few guys that can say all of those things. You might have won the Heisman Trophy, but you might have been selected 7th, or you might have been selected 3rd, or maybe even 1st. But 2nd, he was the perfect mentor to Jaden Daniels. It's not necessarily what you wanted, but it's what we needed here, right? We'll see how everything else shakes out, but Noah Brown isn't what I wanted, but it's what we need here. He fits this team. And so I like the signing. I don't love it, but I like it a lot. So add him to the mix of these receivers. Now we have 7 receivers on this roster. We'll see what happens. Speaking of Marcus Mariota, I'm glad Robert Parrish brought this up. Did you see? He gave up the 0 to Mike Sainristil. So Frozone is back, ladies and gentlemen. I don't know if you saw that diamond encrusted piece around Mikey's neck during the game against I want to say it was against the Dolphins. They did a sideline interview with him, and he had his dope ass Frozone piece around his neck. That came from college because he was 0 in college as well. And so I didn't know if he would be able to get to 0. I thought it was pretty cool that Marcus Mariota was going to be the first quarterback to wear the number 0 in the NFL. But apparently he said, nah, you can have 0, young fella. I'll take 18. No worries. Hopefully we never see 18 on the field unless we're beating the brakes off of somebody. Hopefully we don't see 18 on the field this year. That number was worn by Mitchell Tinsley initially. Now it's Marcus Mariota. Kudos to Mariota. I don't know if the young fella had to give up a little bit to get it, or if Marcus just said, bro, don't worry about it. Just, you can have 0. I'll take 18. Don't worry about it. Whatever the case may be, good for Mike Sainristil. Love to see it. So, let's get to the practice squad. Washington announced its practice squad yesterday, finalized it today. So let's go through this list quickly. All of the guys you see with asterisks next to their name are the ones that I predicted. So I told you I knew I was going to be way off because it's so hard to predict. The practice squad, I could have gotten a little bit more right, I feel, because I went too far outside of the box when I was picking guys that were on the current roster thinking they would put in waiver claims. If I didn't do that, like, for instance, if there was no Jamison Crowder on my practice squad list, I would have picked Bryson Tremaine, and I would have gotten that one right. But because I thought they were going to bring in another receiver, and they did, but they didn't do it at the expense of Jamison Crowder, I got that one wrong, right? Same could be said for the defensive end position. I thought they would bring back Andre Jones Jr. if I didn't put that they would cut Javonte Jean-Baptiste to bring somebody on from outside the organization when they put in a waiver claim, which they didn't. I would have selected Andre Jones Jr. because Andre Jones Jr. literally looks just like Javonte Jean-Baptiste. They look like doppelgangers of one another. They would have preferred KJ Henry, obviously, but he got picked up. You know, the Bengals put in a claim for him and they got him. So the next best guy was Andre Jones Jr. So because I had KJ Henry already on the list, and I would have put Andre Jones up here too, if not for Javonte Jean-Baptiste. But nonetheless, I got 5, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 if you add in HN, the IPP player. But I won't even count him because I didn't have to guess that one. I knew he was going to be here because he doesn't count against their practice squad number. Why not keep him? So let's go over the 16 names here quickly. Sam Hartman, we knew he would be back. Michael Wiley, we knew he'd be back. Bryson Tremaine had a really strong camp. It just didn't translate to the game, but I know they like him. They love his special teams ability, and he's a big body. You know, Kaz Allen, they really wanted him to make the roster. He just didn't make enough plays. He didn't showcase enough versatility right now. That doesn't mean he won't showcase that versatility in the future. He's just not ready. He needs more seasoning. Put him back in the oven, let him cook a little bit longer, and then see if he can help you. If he doesn't cut it next year, they won't keep going down this road with him. But I do think he's worth experimenting with and seeing if he can ultimately turn into a guy that can really help. I really think he can. Cole Turner, one of the surprise cuts in terms of them cutting him in favor of Colson Yankoff. He's back in the mix. Julian, I told you they liked his physicality. Julian Good-Jones was one of the final cuts, so I figured he'd be back just off the strength of that. Max Scarping was a former, second round pick of the Houston Texans. He's a guard. I think he was drafted to be a tackle initially, but they kicked him inside the guard. Andre Jones Jr., as you know, was a 7th round pick in last year's draft. Sheldon Day, former Jacksonville Jaguar, among other teams. The former Golden Domer, Sheldon Day. I liked him a lot when he was at Notre Dame. And they like guys his size. He's undersized, quick, can get into the backfield. So it makes a lot of sense that he's here. Jalen Graham, linebacker, cornerback, Chigozie Anuzium, knew he'd be back here. I like him. I actually like him. Cornerback Bobby Price, don't know a lot about him, but I've heard that he's worked with some of this staff in the past. So he'll be interesting to take a look at. Chris Rodriguez Jr., I'm surprised he's back. I'm not going to lie to you. They gave me the impression that they didn't like him, but clearly I was wrong about that. They featured him in that last preseason game. He actually looked good. He caught the ball well, ran hard. We've seen flashes from Chris Rodriguez Jr., the Jets game last year in particular, but I didn't think he would be back on the practice squad, so that's interesting. Wide receiver Mitchell Tinsley, I thought he showed well in the final preseason game because up until that point, I thought he had been a disappointment. Had opportunities to make plays in the first 2 preseason games and didn't do so. So it was good to see him make some plays in the final preseason game. Defensive lineman Carlos Watkins, and then HN to round out the group. And I think they still have one more spot because HN doesn't count towards the 16 because he's in the IPP. So I really think they can get one more guy on here if they so choose. We'll see if they decide to do that or not. So that's the practice squad. Let's get into what was said at the press conference today, or yesterday, and then we'll get into the one from today. So we got 2 separate press conferences to chop it up about. We'll start with AP and DQ's presser from yesterday. So obviously the first conversation and topic of discussion was their inactivity on the waiver wire and why that occurred. And then the next, topic was John Ridgway and the trade and why that took place. So they started out by talking about the waiver inactivity. And essentially, for lack of a better phrase, he said, it wasn't shit out there, bro. Like, I looked at our roster. I looked at what was out there. None of that shit piqued my interest. So we just rolled with what we had, which is, it didn't take rocket scientists to figure that out. We didn't even need him to tell us that. Your, inactivity on the waiver wire spoke volumes. The Panthers took 5 guys. We took 0, and the Patriots took 4 guys, right? So the top 3 waiver claim teams, 9 taken between 2 of them, and we said, nah, we're good. So, like, the Panthers roster is trash still. They're building, and the Patriots might have the worst roster in football. And so you can see why those 2 teams were active. If they're taking and putting, and no disrespect, but I've always told you when somebody says no disrespect or no offense, disrespect or offense is coming after the conjunction. So, no disrespect to Tariq Castro Fields, but Tariq Castro Fields is a Jag. The fact that Carolina put in a waiver claim to add this man to their 53-man roster means their roster is trash. Okay? Absolute garbage can juice. Okay? So, again, we're not in that same boat. I know a lot of you like to think that we are because you would have done more this offseason, but we're not. Okay? We're not in that same boat. Okay? And DQ and AP said, look, we got up until week 3 to be the second in the waiver claim process. So if something else shakes free, some team, cuts a guy loose that we're interested in between now and week 3, we still have the number 2 position and we can utilize that. And we will if we feel the need to. So he made sure to be very upfront about, look, we still got time to use that number 2 waiver claim position if we so desire. But right now, just didn't make any sense for us. Didn't see any guys that felt like we needed to get rid of somebody off of our roster to bring somebody in. Just didn't feel like that was the case. Then he talked about the John Ridgway trade. And, you know, the more I listen to them talk about how they handled John Ridgway, it makes me think that maybe they traded Jahan to the Eagles, not just because we got the best deal. That's the biggest thing. Like, they weren't going to trade Jahan to the Eagles to do right by Jahan, right? They weren't going to cut off their nose to spite their face. But they not only got the best deal probably that they were offered. Jahan is from Pennsylvania. There's a lot of factors in his personal life that I don't think everybody is privy to. And maybe it benefited Jahan to not only go somewhere where he could, you know, be a factor, but also be close to home, because that was important. And again, I don't think Jahan was looking to go home. I don't think he was looking to get traded. He was blindsided by the trade. You know, he even talked about it. It's a business, this, that, and the third. It's not like he found out on social media. They called him and told him, or told his agent, this is what we're thinking about doing. But he didn't see himself getting traded this offseason. But with Ridgway, they said, look, we got in contact with John Ridgway's agent, and we pretty much said, look, John played his ass off in that 3rd preseason game, put some of his best tape, which they're not wrong. I said this. I told you one of my players of the game in the 3rd preseason game was John Ridgway, along with Fedarian Mathis and KJ Henry, right? Henry ends up on somebody else's active roster. Mathis made this team, and Ridgway ended up getting traded. And so they said he put some good tape out there at the perfect time, because we had interest in him prior to the 3rd preseason game. And then he went out there and balled. And I think he knew that people were eyeballing him, so he needed to go show out and show and prove. And he did. And they said, look, he wasn't going to play here a lot. Let's be honest. If we're healthy, there's nowhere for, you know, John Ridgway to get snaps. So instead of having this man rot on the back end of our roster, we had a chance to, you know, flip a 7th round pick and a player that wasn't going to play for a 6th round pick. Why not? Right? Why not do that? And put John in a much better position to not only play, but be in a scheme that maybe fits him better. And that was the most important part when they said that part, because they want guys that are quick and explosive up front. Look, Dan Quinn has made it no secret. He'll trade speed or he'll trade size and physicality. Well, not physicality. He wants physicality. He'll trade size and girth, pause, for speed and quickness up front, which is why Dallas got run on, which is why Atlanta at times would get run on when he was the head coach there. He doesn't have to do that here, which is why I don't worry about our run defense. Cowboys fans want to tell us, oh, you're not going to be able to stop the run. I beg to differ. We have guys that can play like he wants his defensive tackles to play, except we don't have to trade the size. We don't have to make that trade-off. Deron Payne and Jonathan Allen are 300 pounds. So we're not out here putting 285-pound, 280-pound defensive tackles out here because we want quickness in the middle. That's what they did in Dallas. That's what they did sometimes in Atlanta. So, Ridgway was a big physical guy, but he didn't meet the quickness criteria that they set. And so Mathis does. I don't know if you've been watching Mathis this preseason, but Mathis has been moving out there. I thought this was a great quote from Chef P. He talked about his time in New England briefly, and he said, at the top of our ledger in New England, he said, I had a great opportunity to start my career in New England, right? We know his trajectory, his journey. Started in New England, then went to Denver, then went to San Francisco. Now he's here, right? He said, I started in New England. And at the top of our ledger, before we started the season, my first year, it said, we're not collecting talent. We're building a team. That's some profound, powerful shit. That's what a lot of you need to repeat to yourself. We're not collecting talent. A lot of y'all like to collect names. I'm guilty of that too. I shouldn't distance myself. I'm just as guilty as the rest of you. This isn't one of those times where I can distance myself from y'all. I'm guilty too, right? We're not collecting talent. It's easy to do that. Collect talent, figure it out later, but the pieces don't fit together. They're trying to build a team. You need talent now. You can't overlook that portion of it and that aspect of it. You need talent, but you also got to get guys that fit together. That's important too. Have you ever been on a team where the teammates didn't like each other? That's not a good situation. It's not a good situation. I put in my notes to the fans. So Ben Standing asked him, what do you say to the fans that want you to do more, want bigger splashes, right? The fans that, for me, lack of a better term, are still stuck on Dan Snyder shit. That's how I view it. You complained about him when he was here, but you still stuck in that mindset. Hey, go get this player, go get that player, go get this player, go trade for this guy. You still stuck on that shit. And I ain't just talking about Brandon Ayuk. Anytime somebody gets released, anytime somebody is made available via trade, or there's rumors somebody, I get added 15 million times. Hey, Louie T, did you see this? What about this guy? And you still stuck in that mindset. That's the equivalent of being stuck in a poverty mindset. You gotta let that shit go, man. Those days are over. You should be glad that we're removing ourselves as far as we can from that. But some of y'all are still stuck in that same mindset. He was like, anytime something comes across his desk or a guy is made available or his phone rings, he asks himself the same question. And this is Adam Peters I'm talking about. Is this the best for our team? Short term and long term. And you can't just be in a short term. A lot of y'all also are in a short term frame of mind. Y'all want to win now. And again, I told you, I won't chastise you. I won't wag my finger at those of you who want to win now because I understand what you've gone through. I've went through it as well. I'm a little bit more patient than some of you, which is fine. Not everybody has the level of patience that I do, but I get it. And they get it too. And that's the beauty of it. They're not doing the Ron Rivera thing where they're coming in here and asking you to wait 3 years. They're not going to do that. They know that's foolish and unreasonable to ask you to do that. It may take 3 years, but they're not going to ask you to wait 3 years. That's the difference. He talked about building an identity and growing it. And this was more Dan Quinn talking about this. He said, he talked about how important it is to establish an identity. And, you know, that was my thing. That's been my thing. I've been like a dog with a bone in terms of identity, probably the last 3 or 4 years in particular, right? Having an identity, standing for something, you know, what are you looking for? What do you hang your hat on? There should be something that you look at with your team and you say, look, I know if there's nothing else we're going to do, we're going to do that shit, right? Like there should be something that you should be able to hang your hat on as a fan when, look, I can't tell you nothing else about my team, but I'm going to tell you this. We're going to do this thing right here, if nothing else. Like the Cleveland Browns, you might not know from week to week what the hell you're getting out of Deshaun Watson or any of their quarterbacks. But you know what the hell they're going to do? They're going to run the hell out of that goddamn football. I do know that. And it don't matter who the hell's that running back. They're going to run that bitch. All right? Same thing with the Baltimore Ravens, right? Same thing with the San Francisco 49ers. Really don't matter who the hell is back there. They're going to run that bitch. Good luck stopping it, okay? You got to stand for something, man. You have to have some sort of identity. The Dan Quinn identity and mold has been, hey, we're going to play fast and physical. Every week we show up, we're going to fly around. It may not get us the results we're looking for, but we're going to fly the hell around. And if you're not ready for this shit, you in trouble. You in trouble. Son, be ready. And I take pride in knowing my team now is going to fly around every single week. I don't have to worry about lethargic effort, guys loafing on the backside. Oh, man, that guy could have made the tackle if he was hustling. Man, that guy could have recovered the fumble if he was busting his ass to get there. I ain't got to worry about that no more. That's part of the identity and the DNA of a Dan Quinn coach team. And he says, the further you get into the program, the more that shit should be ingrained in the players. We just starting right now. But 2-3 years from now, oh, that goes without saying. I don't even have to say it. Y'all know what it is. Talked about the energy in the building. And this is something that I've heard repeated from every single person that has spoke. From Cliff Kingsbury to Brand, to Chef P, to DQ. Anybody you hear talk, they talk about the energy and what's permeating in that building. Some of the players have spoken about it. That's a real thing. And it starts with DQ. DQ is a big ball of energy. He's like a shot of adrenaline. I love it. Love it. He talked about and this was Adam Peters. He talked about the difference being in the GM chair this time of the year. And this was his first time. He's never been the guy. And he's like, he said, I used to always wonder why he would see John Lynch and he would be so somber this time of the year. And he's like, man, cheer up. We got the season is right around the corner. What you upset about? What you looking so down about? And he says, now I get it. You just ended some dude's dream or delayed it, at least in certain instances. And he's like, all of these guys are like family members now. You've spent all this time with them. You've watched them develop. You want to keep everybody, but you can't. And so it's tough. It's tough. But you got to make those decisions because you got to do what's best for the organization. He talked about last year's draft class. A lot has been made over the last 24 to 48 hours about last year's draft class and how there's only 2 guys left on the active roster from a draft class that took place last year. And he said, look, man, once we got here, everybody was a commander. There wasn't a them versus us mentality. Our guys versus their guys. Everybody's a commander. I love that answer, first and foremost. Secondly, he said, look, a lot of those guys are on the practice squad, and a lot of those guys are going to contribute. And I didn't think about it that way. A lot of people probably didn't think about it that way. But Andre Jones is on the practice squad. Chris Rodriguez Jr. is on the practice squad. Who else was drafted last year that is on the practice squad? Is that it? I feel like it's at least one more guy from last year's draft. Let's see. Andre Jones, Chris Rodriguez. That's it, actually. Now, Bryson Tremaine, Kaz Allen, Mitchell Tinsley, you could consider them part of last year's draft class, but they weren't drafted, right? They were undrafted. So, yeah, there's still 2 guys essentially on the practice squad from the draft class. But look, let's just be honest. That draft class sucked. It is what it is. He's not going to say that, but it is what it is. That draft class sucked, and they did away with it, right? on if there are any major moves left before the start of the season. There was a laugh and a chuckle and a, exchange from DQ where he said, define, big move or whatever. And a lot of people took that as, oh, they're going to go get Brandon Ayuk. I didn't take that as that. I took that as, look, if an opportunity to improve this team, which is what they've said, and they've been consistent in their messaging, if an opportunity to improve this team presents itself, we are going to take it. Period. End of discussion. So I didn't put too much thought into that other than, look, if an opportunity to get Brandon Ayuk for a reasonable price arises, because look, there may come a point, if you wait the 49ers out, there may come a point where they get so desperate. Look, John Lynch is at wit's end. I don't know if you're following that Brandon Ayuk situation, but he literally quoted yesterday and said, at some point, you have to show up and play. So at this point, it doesn't sound like Brandon Ayuk is going to get a deal done, because I think they offered him something. He turned it down, and they're like, bro, we're not giving you any more than this. And so if this isn't good enough, then we're not going to be able to get a deal done, because we can't afford to pay you more than this. And he's like, well, bet, trade me then. It's the same thing Jamar Chase is doing in Cincinnati. I don't know if you pay attention to that. I'm so glad we don't have those types of situations here in Washington, right? Because with Jamar Chase, I can understand it. Ayuk isn't that good to me to be able to do the shit that he's doing right now. And that's just my personal opinion. Jamar Chase, I get it, okay? Although you really should be playing this year, and then next year they'll bless you. But I get it. You look around the league, you say, I'm better than 90% of the dudes that got broken off this offseason. 11 receivers received new deals this offseason. And he's like, I should be 12. Bless me. The Bengals, I'm telling you right now, they're not going to budge. If there's not a more stubborn organization in football, but that's a conversation for the podcast, right? So I don't think anything's going to get done, but if the 49ers should get desperate and say, you know what, we just want to rid ourselves of this issue. This man is creating a distraction that we don't need. We already trying to figure out how we're going to get Trent Williams to bring his ass back. We don't need this shit. Let's move on, right? Maybe you get a deal. Maybe you're able to fleece these boys, right? Remember, John Lynch is his boy. If you can get, it's the same thing when you watch Hard Knocks with the Giants. And how he was able to get Brian Burns for a second is because Dan Morgan was his best friend. So he was able to kind of finesse him and say, hey, look, man, in a normal situation, Dan Morgan would have been like, bro, I need a first-round pick. This Brian Burns we talking about here, man. You finna pay this dude $45 million and you want to give me a second? Bro, I need a first-round pick for this man. But that's his boy, so he was able to finesse him for a second. Adam Peters, John Lynch is his boy. He might be able to hey, look, man, I know this dude is a thorn in your side. Let me help you out, man. All right. I got this 4th-round pick sitting right here, man. It ain't doing nothing. It's just chilling. It's yours, bro. Lynch probably if I don't do anything, he's going to play ball this year at some point. I'm going to get a 3rd-round compensatory. The comeback to that is, but you're not getting it this year. Here's a 4th-round pick you can touch, you can see, you can feel now. Take it, right? Who knows? You don't know, right? You don't know unless you try. But I don't think anything's happening. I wouldn't hold my breath. He's on the wide receiver group. He started by talking about the wide receiver group, did Adam Peters. This is my type of answer, because this is the shit I've been telling y'all. But everybody, even on the Super Friends stream last night, they wanted to focus on our receiver position. Jaden Daniels doesn't have anybody to throw the football to. And I'm like, see, y'all missing the point. Y'all narrow-minded, right? Y'all not listening. Because what I've tried to explain to people is this ain't about the receivers. It's about the entire offense. Y'all keep talking about who's he going to throw the ball to. Last time I checked, you're allowed to throw the ball to more than just the wide receivers. We have tight ends. You can call Zach Ertz old all you want. but he can still produce. We got tight ends. We got running backs. We got guys that can catch the football. So in my mind, it's not just about the receivers. Yeah, one or two of them are going to have to step up this year, not named Terry McLaurin. But at the end of the day, there are other guys, and he literally said, it's not just the receivers. We feel really good about the tight end group. We got 4 tight ends on the roster that we feel can catch the football, and a 5th sitting on the practice squad. And we got running backs. He said, and I love this answer, because I've been saying this all offseason. When they first got here and they brought in Austin Eckler, I said they disrespected my man Brian Robinson Jr.'s ability to catch the football. And he said, we got 2 really good pass catcher backs, including Brian Robinson, who I think has an underrated ability to catch the football. He's dynamic as a pass catcher. I said, you damn right, Chef P. Cook that shit, bro. Cook it. I want to hear that shit sizzle on the goddamn skillet. Cook that shit. Telling you, Jaden's going to be just fine. People want to keep talking about who's he going to throw the ball to, what kind of weapons do you have for Jaden. He'll be fine. This shit ain't going to be good enough next year. But for this year, it's fine. It's fine. It'll get the job done. On getting players in trades versus picks. So JP Finley asked Adam Peters, was there any thought to getting players back versus getting picks in these trades, or do you prefer picks? And AP said, look, you always weigh all of those options when considering what you're going to do, right? So in because JP tried to make it seem like it was a pick swap both times. And he's like, yeah, the John Ridgeway trade was a pick swap. You know, you throw in a player with a 7th and you get a 6th in return. He said the Jahan deal wasn't no swap. We got a 3rd round pick out of that, bro. But and you do consider maybe we can get a tackle from the Eagles. They got a bunch of them, right? Maybe we can get a receiver from the Saints. Maybe we can get a corner from the Saints. But I've told you this before. I think they value the draft pick more because it gives them a fresh slate with a player that you get to have under your control for 4 years at a reduced and controlled cost. And it's guys that I and my staff, Lance Newmark, our scouts, have laid eyes on, and we've identified this guy as a commander, and we put a commander tag on him. So I think you prefer, when you're building this thing up, if we were close to winning something, you prefer the player because you want instant gratification. You need help now. We're not winning anything of note this year. Even if we exceed expectations, we ain't winning the Super Bowl. So you take the draft capital. That's going to be more important because that gives you that flexibility that I talked about, right? That optionality that they speak of. All right. So then they talked about future versus present. There was a lot of conversation around winning now versus winning in the future, now versus later. And that's a big topic of discussion within the fan base. I have that conversation with you guys all the time. It's a real conversation that people are interested in because fans want to win now. They're in the fan right now that wants to lose this season or is willing to go into this season and say, hey, I'm cool with 5, 6, or 7 wins. In my brain, I'm like, I understand that that's probably the outcome of the season, and I'm okay with it, but that's not what I'm rooting for, right? It's not what I want. So they're aware of that, and they're like, look, man, let me see if there's a quote here. There's a quote here I want to read to you guys. I think it's a really good one. I only write down quotes when I think it's some really impactful and profound shit. This is a conversation about future versus present, winning now versus winning in the future. Quote, and this is Adam Peters talking about not putting in any waiver claims, hunkering down with the roster that they currently have and looking to win games with this group that they've assembled. And the notion is, right, this is the narrative, because we didn't put any waiver claims in, because we weren't aggressive in pursuing this guy or that guy via trade, because we traded away Jahan Dotson and we traded away John Ridgeway, we're not trying to win now, right? That's the perception that's out there. Quote, and this is Chef P. It's a lot harder to get good players at this point in the season than it is in March and really in April. Those are the times when you can really get a lot of good players. There's just not as many out there right now. They're all on good teams or all on teams for the most part, close quote. So essentially what he's saying is, remember I talked about those crispy Air Force Ones earlier that I wanted? And my mom brought me home some Saucony Jazz. There ain't no Air Force Ones out there, bro. Those don't exist right now. That shit you was looking for, the shit that y'all was looking for, it ain't out there. It ain't out there. So getting the Saucony Jazz, take it. Noah Brown, take it. Because them Air Force Ones you looking for, they don't exist. You'd have had to get them back in March or April. You ain't getting that in August. So on the practice squad construction, he talked about, going back and forth as to whether you want a certain amount of players at each position, or do you just get the best players possible and put them on your practice squad? And he essentially said, you just get the best players possible and put them on your practice squad. Of course, there are certain positions you may look at and say, hey, we need another one of these just in case. But for the most part, you just try to get as much talent as you can and put them on the practice squad, right? Winning now versus winning into the future. Again, same kind of conversation. And they said, look, we're trying to win now. We understand that it's a process, but that's not stopping us from going after it. And DQ was like, look, we know it's a process and we know this ain't going to happen overnight. That ain't going to stop us from going after it and trying to go get it right now, right? Every day we come to work, every time we start preparing for an opponent, every time we step out on that field, we trying to go after it and go get it. And so while, we may not have the ultimate results that we're looking for, that ain't going to stop us from chasing them. That's all you can ask for, right? We understand. Most of us are rational enough to understand what this season represents. But that shouldn't stop them from chasing after a dub each and every single week and putting their head down, scratching and clawing and fighting. And then when the season's done, look up and see if you got enough bricks in the left-hand column to play bonus football. That's all you can ask them to do. And then on Jeff Driscoll, they talked about Jeff Driscoll making this roster and whether or not the league essentially reneging on their emergency quarterback rule and doing away with it at the last minute that really prohibited teams from keeping a emergency quarterback on the practice squad. Did that influence them to keep Jeff Driscoll on the official 53-man roster? And he said, no, he earned it. He played really well. And at the end of the day, they thought he did enough to warrant being on the 53-man roster. I think when it's all said and done, they thought they might lose Jeff Driscoll, and they might have lost him. There are a lot of bad backup quarterbacks around the league, man. And if you're a team that thinks you're in a position to win some shit, did you just see the Chargers trade for Taylor Heineke? Cut Jeff Driscoll's ass if you want to. He probably would have ended up right in goddamn LA with the Chargers. Like, it's a lot of bad backup quarterbacks. They know. We cut Jeff Driscoll, there's a chance we won't get his ass back. And I think that had more to do with it than the rule, not being pushed through, right? So that was AP and DQ's. And I heard your jokes, okay? I heard your jokes, Mega, okay? And for the record, no, I don't wear lotion. I'm not a lotion wearer. All right. So you might catch me a little ashy sometimes. I don't care. Okay. And I had just gotten out of the water when you saw me. So it didn't help at all. But I heard your jokes. Okay. Anyway, I digress. Assistant GM Lance Newmark, my guy, Brand, wrote, talked about, and I got a long quote to read you guys here, right? This is on the building and the collaborative nature of AP, DQ, and Lance Newmark, and how well they've worked together in this short 6-month period, and the things that they've have been able to do, right? This is a quote that I think is so impactful. I wrote the whole thing down, and this thing was probably spanning 1 minute and 30 seconds long, right? This is what my guy Brand said. Quote, "It's been great. I'll be honest with you. It's been a really cool experience. This is a great building to be in right now." Let's stop right there. Did you hear what he just said? Let me repeat that first statement. It's been great. I'll be honest with you. It's been a really cool experience. This is a great building to be in right now. When's the last time somebody said that this was a great building to be in? Most people who were here were being held hostage. The only thing that was keeping them here was that they were collecting a check. People actually volunteered to come here, especially Lance Newmark. My guy Brand had been in Detroit for almost 20 years. He didn't need to leave, but he chose to come here. We're going to talk about that in this presser. He said, so let me start that quote over. I'm going to just read the whole thing through. Quote, "It's been great. I'll be honest with you. It's been a really cool experience. This is a great building to be in right now. I feel like it's a very unique situation where a lot of really motivated, talented people came together to try and do something special. He says, Dan and Adam both have great reputations and they've been winners, and a lot of people came here believing in them, and the energy and atmosphere is really good. Players, coaches, staff, existing employees, everybody's bought in. There's great energy in this building. There's a lot of excitement for next Sunday, and we're ready to get going." Close quote. Hearing that from my guy Brand, coupled with what I saw last night. Not Ashley Louie, man. Not Ashley Louie. That's a good one. That's a good one, Teddy E. I looked at that schedule last night. For the first time, I really looked at it. Listening to Lance Newmark, listening to DQ, AP, how I feel about this roster. While it's not a great roster and it's far from a finished product, it's going to be a competitive roster, one that's going to give us a chance. And in my mind, I thought the schedule was a lot harder than what it was. But having looked at these teams in the preseason, and I get it, it's preseason, and you really don't know what to expect from a lot of these teams. But we're going to have a chance in every single game this season. That includes week 3. That includes whenever we play the Ravens. That includes the Browns and the Steelers, or whatever games you may think are going to be really tough. At Dallas, at Philadelphia on a Thursday night. We got a chance to win every single game on the schedule. We won't, obviously. But in going through the schedule, I see a path. Now, I'm not predicting this. I actually ended up going with 8 wins. 8-9 was my final record for the season. I could see a path to where you get to 9 or 10 or, wins. I won't say 11. I don't see that happening. But I could see a path to 10 wins. Now, in order to do that, you're going to have to beat some teams that you're not supposed to beat, and you're going to have to win the games you're supposed to win. And I just don't think we're at that level yet, right? You have to beat Carolina. Are we going to beat Carolina? I don't know. Right? But if you want to win 9 or 10 games, you have to beat Carolina. You have to beat Tennessee. Are you going to beat Tennessee? I don't know. But if you want 9 or 10 wins, you're going to have to beat Tennessee, right? Those are the types of teams that the expectations are low for them this season. They're not very good. You're going to have to beat them. But guess what? The expectations are low for us. Most people probably think we're not very good, and they should beat us. Again, people are looking at us on their schedule and say, hey, we better beat Washington. It's the same way, right? You talk to a Panthers fans and they counting us as a win. You talk to a Titans fan and they're counting us as a win. So it goes both ways. You want to win 9 or 10 games, you got to beat the Bears at home. Bears might be a good team this year. Got to find a way to beat them. You want to win 9 or 10 games, you're going to have to go at least 3-3 in the division. You're going to have to play much better at home. We won 1 home game last season. 1. We won 4 games a season ago. 3 of them were on the road. Okay? You're going to have to protect Northwest Stadium, right? But I can see how we could get to 9 or 10 wins. Now, I'm not doing that. I'm not applying that pressure. I'm not doing that thing. But I see it. And when you start listening to guys talk about this season and how things can go and the energy in the building and, how far they've come, man, I'm telling you. So Lance Newmark talked about understanding what a DQ player looks like. And he talked about the profile tapes that they, had put together and how they sat down for a ton of hours together with DQ and the scouting staff and AP, and they got after it. And they really dug into what type of scheme and players fit that scheme. And I can tell, right? I can tell that their scouting department and Lance Newmark and Adam Peters understood the assignment, because I was able to depict what players would fit Dan Quinn's scheme, right? I told y'all, Jeremy Chin, Frankie Louvu, these are the types of players. Did I not tell y'all Michael Davis fit here? These are the types of players that fit what Dan Quinn wants to do. I picked players in the draft. I told y'all about Johnny Newton. I told y'all about Jordan McGee. I told y'all about Dominique Hampton. These are guys that fit what Dan Quinn is looking for in a football player. So clearly, they understood the assignment. He said, we spent hours watching film and dissecting exactly what it is they were looking for. And Dan Quinn did a great job of explaining to us what they needed in a player to make it work. Hence your end result, right? I love this from Brand. I love this right here. He said he sees a lot of similarities between Dan Campbell and Dan Quinn. And you know what? God damn it, so do I. This is why I feel confident saying, gotcha, bitch. They got me again. Because I'm pushing them away like, hey, you trying to get me to come to the table and start talking that 9-10 win shit. And I'm pushing myself away from the table like, no, bro. 7 or 8. 8 max. Stop. And they keep reeling my ass in. They throwing that fish hook out there and they reeling my ass in. Gotcha, bitch. You thought you was going somewhere, didn't you? Come on, man. Get on board. He said there's so many similarities between Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell is my favorite coach in the NFL right now because he's unapologetic for being who he is. A lot of people gave him shit in that NFC Championship game for going for it on 4th down as many times as he did. And you know what I said after that game was done? I might have kicked a field goal once or twice, but you know what? That's who they are, and that's who they've been, and that's how they got there, and they stay true to who they are and what their identity is. And I can't blame a man for falling on his sword saying, this is how we do things. And if we're going to lose doing it the way we do it. And we're going to lose doing it the way that got us here. Not going to change up who we are because it's this game and it's this moment. Nah, this is how we got here. This is how we're going to win. And this is how we're going to lose. But whatever happens, we're going to do it our way. I can respect that. I can respect the hell out of that shit. And he said with Dan Campbell, this whole mantra of anybody, anywhere, anytime is exactly how they go about business. This man, Dan Campbell, said, if you looking for us, you ain't got to look far. Just open your front door. We standing on your front porch. If you want the smoke, you ain't got to go nowhere. Open your front door. We waiting on your ass. Come on outside. That's the same energy I get from Dan Quinn. You look, if you Dallas and you thinking you're going to keep chumping us, you're going to keep little broing us, you're going to keep putting your hand on our forehead and we swinging, but we can't reach you, bring your ass outside. Anybody, anywhere, anytime. We going to Philly on a Thursday night and we're going to beat their ass in their building. Anybody, anywhere, anytime. That's that Dan Campbell energy. That's that Dan Quinn energy. And Lance Newmark's like, I know what that shit looks like up close and personal. And I'm telling you, that energy exists in this building. That shit got me fired up. He talked about his relationship with Adam Peters and how that was the reason. And again, I talked about the domino effect. The only reason he left Detroit was because it was Adam Peters. Now, obviously, he wants the opportunity to be an assistant GM because that's one step to where that's a step closer to where he ultimately wants to be, which is his own GM, right? That's why you do this. You don't want to be an assistant GM. You don't want to be a head scout. You don't want to be, over player personnel, right? You want to be the guy. That's why you do this. And he said him and Adam Peters forged this relationship for over, close to 20 years through the scouting community. They were scouts that came up in the game together. And they were at a lot of these seminars and a lot of these different things. And they would always catch up with each other. And he said he always knew that if Adam Peters got a gig, he was going to bring him along. And he said he got the job and he hit me up. And he's like, it was a tough decision. And the dude said, you left Detroit after being there for a million years. And Lance Newmark shook his head like, yeah, I was there for a long time. Like Lance Newmark was there from since 2003 or some shit like that. 2005 or something like that. He'd been there for a long time. So to get him to leave somewhere where he was very comfortable and very well respected, it took a lot. And he's like, it really was Adam Peters. And that's the domino effect I talked about. Like, look, it takes a lot to get a guy to leave, like Lance Newmark. But Adam Peters' presence is one that it extends. It's like it has tentacles. It extends and it has reach. And that's why we were able to build the type of front office that we currently have. Guys from Baltimore, guys from Detroit, all over the place. High-level executives, guys from the NFL front office. It's amazing. He talked about the profile tapes and the intentionality of building the roster. I talked about the intentionality of building the roster just, 2-3 days ago when I talked about you don't think them bringing on a guy like Bobby Wagner or Zach Ertz or Austin Eckler wasn't intentional? You don't think they put this roster together with intentionality? You're wrong. You're mistaken. And he literally talked about that. Like they built this roster with certain things in mind, which is what you should do. I always felt like Rivera and company were just throwing darts at the board. Clearly, Ricky Stromberg in the third, Braden Daniels in the fourth, trading up for a long snapper in the fifth. They were just doing shit. There was no rhyme or reason. There was no intentionality. Oh, we need a long snapper. Well, let's trade up multiple picks to go get a long snapper in the fifth round that can't snap. Good job. Hey, we just signed Nick Gates in free agency, he's our starting center. Let's go draft another center in the 3rd round. That'll really shock them. Great job. Hey, let's draft a tackle who's not ready to play in the NFL for probably the next 2 or 3 seasons in the 4th round. Let's waste the 4th round pick on that guy. Let's reach for a defensive tackle in the 2nd round because we need a defensive tackle. Ding! Let's draft Jamin Davis in the 1st round because he's got a military background and he's got great measurables. Ding! There was no rhyme or reason. Let's go sign William Jackson III and make him a zone corner when he's a press man-to-man cover corner. Ding! There needs to be intentionality when you do shit. Make it make sense. None of that shit ever made sense. On the John Ridgeway trade, he talked about the same things that AP talked about when regarding John Ridgeway. You know, they just gave him an opportunity to go somewhere else where he could shine, get more opportunities to play. Kind of just we gonna do right by John. He's a good dude, played hard for us, did everything we asked him to do, and we just wanted to give him an opportunity. And we bettered our situation. We took a 7th round pick and flipped it into a 6th round pick. Right? He talked about building the short term versus the long term, winning now versus winning in the future. I told you that was a big topic of conversation over the last 24 hours or so. And he said, I think this is the perfect phrase to use for this because this is so true. He said, it's a delicate balance. Truer words have never been spoken. What a delicate balance it is. Again, you can't come in here and Ronald was very, very negligent. He was not delicate at all. He came in here and said, hey, I need y'all to forget about y'all past. All right. We know you got your ass whooped by the last organization for 20 years, the last regime or the ownership group for the last 20 years. We need you to forget about all that shit. Forget about all the losing. Forget about all the pain, suffering, strife you've gone through as a fan base. Forget about that. Erase that shit from your memory bank. Clear the slate. Give me a fresh opportunity to change things here and give me 3 years to do it. Don't look for us to win for the next 3 to 4 years. Give me a chance to get this shit right. That's an impossible ask, bro. They're like, Lance Newmark's like, that's a delicate balance. We trying to win. Trust me. We're doing everything in our power to win now. But we understand that we're not going to sacrifice future winning for winning now. That doesn't make any sense. So we're not going to go out here and splurge and set ourselves back trying to win this year when the ultimate goal is to have sustainability and sustained success. So you got to juggle trying to win in the future, which is why you signed Frankie Louvu to a 3-year deal and Tyler Biadasz to a 3-year deal and Dorrance Armstrong Jr. to a 3-year deal. But you signed the older guys and some of the other guys that may help you this year, but you don't know if they're going to be able to help you in future years to 1-year deals. Keeps you flexible. You're not going to put a whole bunch of extra money on the books into the future. Gives you that optionality that you need to extend Terry, extend Jonathan Allen, bring in a Brandon Ayuk, bring in a T. Higgins, et cetera, right? So I love it, right? Brand talked about when he was in Detroit, he saw Matthew Stafford when they drafted him and what that did for the organization in terms of what having an established quarterback does for your organization and your team. And he essentially said what we already know, but it's good to hear anyway. Having a quarterback allows you to build up the rest of your roster. The most important position in the sport is the quarterback position. Once you've gotten that settled, and that's no longer at the top of your list of things that you need to do, now you can start focusing in on other aspects of the roster. Because you can fix up the rest of the roster. The Jets are a great case in point. The rest of the roster can be ready to go. You don't have no quarterback, it don't really matter, right? Who gives a shit? Then you got the #1 defense in football, the #3 defense in football. You got all these skill players, Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson and all these guys that can dominate a game. Who gives a shit? You still got Zach Wilson at quarterback. You ain't winning shit, right? So if you got a quarterback and you don't have a lot of talent, you can figure it out. You can put talent around that quarterback once you figure out we got the guy. And he said, I'll take it a step further. When we drafted Stafford, this team is far superior to the team that we had around Stafford when we first got him. So we feel like we're ahead, or at least he said, I feel like we're ahead of where that team was from a talent perspective. Remember, when they drafted Matthew Stafford, the Lions the year before went 0-16. That's how they got Stafford. So imagine how bad that roster had to be to not win a game and then get Matthew Stafford, right? He said, so they asked him, is this roster where you envisioned it would be at this time? And he said, this is a quote from him, and I thought it was a great quote, so I wrote it down. This is another one that got me excited. Quote, we probably were able to do a little bit more in the 6 months than I thought we were going to be able to do in terms of player acquisition and getting to where I think we're going to be a fun team to watch. It's been a great 6 months. I'm really happy where we are, closed quote. Let me read that again. Quote, we probably were able to do a little bit more in this 6 months than I thought we were going to be able to do in terms of player acquisition and getting to where I think we're going to be a fun team to watch. It's been a great 6 months. I'm really happy where we are, closed quote. You have to understand that it's not easy to do what they did in a 6-month period. And for the people that have been, they should have done more. They should have done more. I'm like, I don't know what else more you wanted them to do. Honestly, I'm pleased with the outcome. I think this is a roster that can compete. Again, the better teams in the league should beat us. They should beat us. On paper, they should take care of business against us. But I think they've put together a competitive enough roster that we're going to fight. We're going to be in there. And if we're able to make some plays, we'll have a shot in a lot of these games. There'll be games where we're overmatched. We don't have enough. We're not there yet. And you'll be able to tell. But there'll also be some games where you go, we're better than them. We're further along in our process than they are. Or, you know what? They might be better than us, but they're not better coached than us, right? So there's a lot that you got to be able to understand. They did a lot in 6 months. You might not think they did enough. I think they did plenty. Can't fix everything. That's been my mantra since day one. You cannot fix everything in one offseason. They did a lot. He talked about the intangibles of a player in this organization, what that looks like. He said, people that love football, love to be around each other, and love to work. It's a demanding environment, and it's not for everyone. I just love that not for everyone part of it. I love when Joe Witt Jr. said, this ain't for everybody. When Dan Quinn said, this ain't going to be for everybody. Adam Peters said, this situation ain't going to be for everybody. And Lance Newmark said, this ain't for everybody. I don't like when everybody gets a gold sticker and a gold medal, right? You got to teach kids at some point, hey, there's a winner and a loser. Everybody can't win. In that same vein, this ain't for everybody. Little Timmy on the basketball team, because you want your kid to play sports, that's cool. And I'm cool with little Timmy playing when he's 5 and he's 6 and he's 7. But at a certain point, everybody that signs up don't get to play. And at certain points, little Timmy can't make the team. He ain't good enough. This ain't for everybody. Little Timmy will make a great mechanic. Little Timmy won't make a great basketball player or a great football player, right? At some point, you got to figure out, are you cut out for this or not? Because this ain't for everybody. You think you want this, but you don't want it bad enough. This ain't for you. That's kind of the point they got to with Jahan Dotson. You tell us you want it bad, and I see you at the press conference with the Eagles holding a football. That's all cool and fine and dandy. But when somebody get in your face and lay hands on you, you don't reciprocate that energy. This ain't for you. And that's okay, because this ain't for everybody. This level of physicality, this level of violence, this level of play, this level of dedication, this ain't for everybody. I love that there's exclusivity. Once upon a time, everybody was invited in. Old, young, trash, good. You can all come to Washington. You looking for a payday? You Albert Hainsworth? Come on down. You 67 years old, you Bruce Smith, you just want to break the sack record? Come on down. They're not interested in winning shit. They just want to get paid. Come on down. You Antoine Randall, you made your career fielding punts and being a dynamic punt returner. You get to Washington. You don't want to return punts. We call you Antoine Randall Fell. Come on down. Don't want to get hit. Want no parts of physicality. Come on down. Trey Quinn, you're trash. Come on down. You can be on the Washington Redskins. It was like that for a long time. Long time. Didn't matter. Come on, man. You're a part of the team. Nah, F that. We got standards now. This shit ain't for everybody. And not everybody's going to be on a squad. And not everybody's supposed to be on a squad. That was my guy, Lance Brand Newmark. So let's get to the comment section real quick, and then I will get you guys out of here. Des Kid 80. Stand up. You are the newest member of the MOBB. Glad to have you on board. Mob, you know what to do. Show Des Kid 80 some love. Welcome him to the squad. You know what it is. Welcome to the squad. Des Kid 80. Welcome aboard. King of the Bluegrass. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, King of the Bluegrass writes, what up, Lou? What's up, King of the Bluegrass? It felt like a long time. It was good to hear from you last night on the Super Friends stream. Felt like I hadn't talked to you in a while. Great stream last night. It was fun as hell. Oh, and by the way, never got a chance to ask, did you like Blue Eye Samurai? You didn't watch my breakdown of it on my podcast, did you? Clearly. That's okay. Yes, I loved it. It was fantastic. Now, some of it was unrealistic, but I didn't mind, right? And I talked about those on the podcast episode. So if you want like that breakdown and how I felt about some of that stuff, you can go to that episode. And I think it's in the title, so you don't have to like search and probe as to what episode of the podcast it was. I think I put it in the title, but it was really good. I enjoyed it thoroughly. I was captivated by it. And I can't wait for season 2, whenever that comes out. I'm looking forward to it. Mr. HTTR, thank you for being a member for 20 months. Who writes, PSA, sign up for the LTN exclusives. I will have a video for that tomorrow. My last hype video for that. I will open up the portal for those of you who have not seen the portal, that have signed up but are waiting to be able to enter in picks and selections. I will open up the portal officially tomorrow. So be on the lookout for that. Also, we have the trip to the Dominican Republic. LTN exclusive presents the trip to the DR. Looking forward to going to Punta Cana, having a blast. Yeah, y'all can talk about me being ashy. I'm going to be ashy on that trip too. I don't give a shit. You ain't going to make me feel bad about not putting lotion on. I dibble and dabble in some oils and shit like that, but I'm not a big lotion guy, right? So talk shit about me if you want to. You're not going to make me feel bad, and you're not going to change I operate. So looking forward to chopping it up with a lot of y'all on that trip. Shout out to everybody who signed up for the trip. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of you sign up for that trip as we get into the season. We'll talk more about that as well. But as my guy, Mr. HTTR said, sign up for the LTN exclusives. So with that said, I'm going to glide to the side, allow you guys to enjoy the rest of your day. I look forward to chopping it up with y'all tomorrow at some point, whether it's just a podcast or I drop a podcast episode and there's a reason to come on and talk about the Commanders, then I will. But until then, you guys have a good one. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day. God bless. And good night. Gotcha, bitch.